Dear Father Simon, Drive Time Collective, as a child, it's fair to say that I was a swot. I love words, I adored English, and I usually got top marks in my class. Check me out. I also had the most irritating, grating habit that any teacher could dream up in their nightmares. I corrected their spelling. Publicly.
Yes.
My partner in crime was a Collins Pocket English Dictionary, and every time I thought they were wrong, and they usually were, at least 2 or 3 times a week, I would surreptitiously flick through it to confirm, and then up my hand would go like a shot. Of course, I assumed that the teachers were grateful for my help, as obviously they didn't want to teach the children wrong spellings. They were bad enough at spelling as it was. Plus, the other children seemed very happy when I put my hand up, and even made sure that when it did go up, the teacher knew about it. In this instance, I was 9 years old, and we were learning about prefixes, specifically the prefix in, and how it could reverse a word's meaning, constant and inconstant, flexible and inflexible, and so on and so forth, until Mr. Smith got to flammable and inflammable. I got suspicious, and just to check, I snuck my little dictionary out to compare the meanings of the 2 words. Unfortunately, I wasn't quite subtle enough, and Mr. Smith noticed my flicking. "All right then, Jane," he says loudly.
Right.
"What does it say for flammable in the dictionary then?" "I'm sorry, sir, I just wanted to check. I can put it away." I trailed off, caving in the face of his confidence and not wanting to make a fuss. No, it's fine. Look it up. What does it say for flammable then?" I was glad to get his approval. "It says, that can catch fire and burn easily, sir." "And what does it say for inflammable?" I flicked through the few pages. "It says exactly the same thing, sir," I answered hesitantly. "What?" The smile left his face, the cheekiness all gone. "Well, the dictionary must be wrong. Get one of the big dictionaries at the back." "Not you, sit down!" So I sat down. "Robert, you look it up," said Mr. Smith. He was a bit of an East Ender.
Yeah.
When under pressure.
Okay.
As so many teachers.
It turns out all of them are. Yeah, go on.
So flick, flick, flick went Robert in the big classroom dictionary. Different times. "She's right, sir," Robert says with a grin. "I can check another one if you like." "Show me that," says Mr. Smith. He's another shouty teacher.
There's another one now.
And then he stomped across the room and took the dictionary. He stared at it for a few minutes and then put the dictionary back and walked out of the room in a strop. All the other students seemed very happy for some reason. I couldn't figure out why. I was only trying to be helpful. I was sure he'd gone to get another dictionary to confirm what the definition of inflammable was. You would have thought a teacher would have known that inflammable also means the same as flammable, but there you go. 20 minutes later, Mr. Smith came back. "Mrs. Jones and I have been talking about it, and the opposite of flammable is non-flammable. Or maybe anti-flammable. We move on. We ignore it."
We ignore it.
Yes, that's what we do.
Move on, nothing to see.
So we carried on with the lesson, and soon it was time for lunch. I tucked my little dictionary in my desk, and I went out to eat and play. Tragedy struck an hour later. As I went back, I found my dictionary had mysteriously gone missing. Mr. Smith was very kind, though, and let me search for it during the afternoon break. We looked on the bookshelves, under the tables. I even emptied my desk completely, twice. And yet we were unsuccessful, even though the only place we didn't look was inside the teacher's desk. 9-year-old me trudged home that day missing her faithful little dictionary, but reassured by Mr. Smith's promise to look for it after school. Come the next day, Mr. Smith was kind enough to tell me straight away that he had looked for many hours, but he couldn't find my dictionary. But luckily, I'm super clever and very helpful, and I'm prepared. "It's all right, sir," I said to him, reaching into my bag and pulled out another Collins Pocket English Dictionary. Identical to the first one. "When my mum bought me the other one, there was a 2-for-1 offer. So she got 2 of the same."
Who's buying 2? Who's buying 2 dictionaries?
Nightmare student's mum.
Maybe she's got 2 children.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, fair enough.
"Oh," was all Mr. Smith could say in reply. And after lunch that day, my old little dictionary magically was... You're not going to believe this, I know, but my old little dictionary magically reappeared on my desk, right where I'd left it the day before. Silly me. I must have missed it when I emptied my desk. Twice. I looked at Mr. Smith. To my young eyes, he seemed older, paler, and haunted by despair.
Really? To your 9-year-old eyes? Really?
Maybe I had wrecked his career by turning him into a baden. My clever clog's attitude had worn him down to his core. I turned him into a felon. He took 3 days off, and for the rest of the term, He was a shadow of his former self.
Yes, that's right.
Our teaching standards dropped noticeably. I feel as though I am in some way to blame. So I seek forgiveness, not from the other children, who were very pleased with me because I got the teacher to stomp off in anger. Nor now do I think about it, do I need forgiveness from Mr. Smith, who was a teacher. He should have been a better speller. I also don't seek forgiveness from Mrs. Jones, who presumably spent 20 minutes calming Mr. Smith down because I had her the year before and she was a terrible speller too. We're getting the measure of you now,
Yeah,
nightmare student from Birmingham. I do seek forgiveness, however, from Mr. Smith's girlfriend, who I never met, but apparently was the one who had to listen to Mr. Smith rant about the one child who was possessed by the demon of Dictionary Corner. Last I heard, sadly, they weren't together. And Mr. Smith...
Not relevant.
Mr. Smith was never quite the same.
Oh, really? Right.
Well, you have to say Mr. Smith comes out of this very badly, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because it does appear
Of
as though he went into her desk and nicked her dictionary. But then... flammable and inflammable. That's quite famously mean the same thing. Anyway, let's check in with Sister Bobby here.
Great story. I'm really impressed at the fact that you carried a little dictionary around with you and you checked. And I can imagine some teachers' annoyance, but I think generally any good teacher will look at it as an opportunity.
Well, we'll welcome public correction.
Yeah, it's not so much public. Well, I'm sure listen, if you're getting it wrong, you need to know. And also, each one teach one. It doesn't matter which way round it comes. That's what I think. 5-year-olds teach me stuff. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to be always the teacher, do you?
I reckon Mr. Smith, every time Nightmare Student from Birmingham's hand went up, a little part of him died.
Well, it's a chance for us all to be better. That's what he was lacking. I think Mr. Smith is definitely lacking. And as for forgiveness for the girlfriend, well, it seems like the girlfriend got off lightly and got away. So there you go. I think you're all right.
Yeah, because you don't want to be married to a bad speller.
No.
Imagine the horror.
It's not that. It's the attitude towards it. I can't spell very well.
Brother Matthew.
Well, I am going to say this is a classic case of a confession where it would be very interesting to hear the other side. And I think Mr. Smith knew full well that flammable and inflammable mean the same thing. What he was a teaching aid. What he was doing is he was thinking, how am I going to make this lesson stand out for my students so that they'll definitely remember this when they go home and indeed in years to come. And he came across, I've got this girl in my class who constantly wants to check things out in the dictionary, so I'll get her involved. And the entire class will therefore remember that flammable and inflammable mean the same thing. And so he does all of this, and then, there's the whole little thing with the dictionary being hidden and stuff like that. Quite a lot of assumptions being made about Mr. Smith having done that with the dictionary. So I'm going to say not